Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Fahmid Islam with you. Before moving on, let's look at today's top stories. Obama says won't campaign for any Democrat who doesn't back gun reforms. Pentagon says discussing options with South Korea after North's nuclear test. All 17 miners rescued from rural New York elevator shaft. Turkish army tanks fire at Kurdish militant targets. Turkey seizes 13 tons of pot off Libyan coast. Those were the headlines, now the details. President Barack Obama said on Thursday that he will not campaign for Democrats who don't back gun reforms, part of his effort to make tougher gun laws a cause in the November 2016 presidential and congressional elections. I will not campaign for, vote for, or support any candidate, even in my own party, who does not support common-sense gun reform, Obama wrote in an op-ed column in the New York Times. All of us need to demand leaders brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies. Obama wrote, all of us need to demand that governors, mayors, and our representatives in Congress do their part. The U.S. Defense Department continues to review options with South Korea to respond to North Korea's nuclear test. The Pentagon said on Thursday, reiterating that the U.S. commitment to South Korea's security is ironclad. We are confident that we, working in locksteps with South Koreans, can respond appropriately to this action and continue to review all options that need to be considered at this point, Pentagon spokesman Peter Cook told in a briefing. He was replying to a question about reports that South Korea had asked the United States to deploy strategic weapons on the Korean peninsula. Cook did not give details about any such request. 17 salt miners who had been trapped in an elevator shaft at an upstate New York mine have been rescued, according to the mine manager. 17 salt miners who had been trapped in an elevator shaft at an upstate New York mine have been rescued, officials said on Thursday, and the mine's owner said it would inspect the property to see what had caused the incident. The miners became trapped about 800 to 900 feet down the elevator shaft at around midnight local time when a lift malfunctioned at Cargill's Kegua salt mine in Lansing, a town of about 11,000 people north of the city of Ithaca in central New York, the Tompkins County Department of Emergency Response said. The workers were not injured, it said. The first 8 were all standing out, showered, smiling, waving, clapping when the last 2 or last 3 came out, said mine manager Sean Wilkinson. A spokesman for Cargill Inc. said the company would launch an investigation into why the elevator malfunctioned.
It was just, again, it's very impressive to see how well they managed the situation, to be honest with you.
Your reaction when you first heard the news?
Turkish tanks on the hills around Caesar pound targets inside the city in an operation the government says is aimed at terrorists, but Kurdish leaders say is killing civilians. Clashes intensified the southeastern town of Caesar on Thursday as a large-scale military campaign entered its 4th week. Turkish forces launched a campaign targeting militias of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, in the southeastern part of the country on December 14th. The military said 225 PKK fighters had been killed in Silopi and the nearby town of Caesar since operations in both places began. Hundreds of soldiers and civilians have also died in towns and cities across the regions in the operations. Violence in the 3-decade-long war with PKK fighters flared in July after the collapse of peace talks between PKK and Turkish government. The Turkish Coast Guard intercepts a Bolivia-registered ship carrying 13 tons of marijuana off the coast of Libya. The Turkish Coast Guard makes a big drug bust on the Mediterranean off the coast of Libya. This Bolivia-registered ship was on the run, but the Turkish Coast Guard wasn't letting it go anywhere. The ship was intercepted in the Coast Guard's first anti-narcotic operation in international waters in 22 years. Upon boarding, Coast Guard members rounded up the crew and brought out the drug-sniffing dogs. Like clockwise, these dogs went to work and found out what their owners were looking for, which is drugs. The Coast Guard says it seized 13 tons of marijuana and detained 9 Syrian nationals on board, all of whom are now destined for Turkey for legal proceedings. We'll take a We are back in a moment with the headlines here. Starvation looms for besieged Syrian town. Truck bomb kills nearly 50 at Libyan police training center. Knife-wielding man shot dead by Paris police on Hebdo anniversary. South Korea resumes anti-North broadcasts. And thousands attend New Year mass rally in Pyongyang. Welcome back to Millennium TV News. Amateur videos, the content of which reporters cannot independently confirm, appear to show emaciated children in the Syrian town of Madaya, currently under siege by Syrian government forces. Warnings of widespread starvation are growing as pro-government forces besiege an opposition-held town in Syria and winter beats, darkening the already bleak outlook for peace talks the United Nations hopes to convene this month. The blockade of Madaya near the border with Lebanon has become a focal issue for Syrian opposition leaders who told a UN envoy this week they will not take part in talks with the government until it and other sieges are lifted. At least 10 people have died of starvation in Madaya in the past 6 weeks, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says.
شو اسمك يا عمو؟
محمد عيسى
يا عمو قديش صار لك بالاكل؟
7 أيام.
Nearly 50 people were killed on Thursday when a bomb hit a police training center in the worst attack since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. The dead and the wounded are rushed into Misrata after a suicide bombing killed at least 47 people and injured more than 100. Hospitals' rooms quickly overflowed as victims battled to survive. The blast struck a police training center in Zlatan, a coastal town between the capital, Tripoli, and Misrata. One trainee at the academy says the bomb detonated during an early morning meeting. He came driving really fast. He drove through the gate in a large vehicle and then exploded. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, but suicide blasts and car bombings are rising in the country, torn apart by years of civil war after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Paris police have shot dead a knife-wielding man wearing a fake suicide belt who tried to enter a police station shouting Allahu Akbar. The incident occurred as Parisians were remembering those killed in the Charlie Hebdo attacks 1 year ago. This is the body of the man who officials said tried to enter a Paris police station with a knife and a fake suicide belt. He was shot dead by police after shouting Allahu Akbar, Arabic for God is great. The incident took place 1 year to the day after the deadly Islamist militant attacks on the Charlie Hebdo satirical magazine. Security throughout Paris was already on heightened alert amid anniversary remembrance ceremonies throughout the city. The man has not been identified nor has a motive been established. Loudspeakers begin broadcasting critical messages following North Korea's announcement of hydrogen bomb test. South Korea has resumed propaganda broadcast via loudspeakers in North Korea, a step that has angered the country in the past. Friday's move came as the international community struggled to find common ground on how best to penalize North Korea following its announcement 2 days ago that it had successfully tested its first hydrogen bomb. The loudspeaker broadcast began at noon local time at an official said the military heightened the level of alert around the locations where the propaganda was being broadcasted. We are putting out critical messages about Kim Jong-un's regime and its fourth nuclear test, saying North Korea's nuclear weapons development is putting its people in more difficult times economically, a military official said. The resumption of the cross-border broadcasts, which include a mix of everything from K-pop and weather forecasts to snippets of news and critics of the North Korean regime, revives psychological warfare tactics that date back to the 1950-53 Korean War. North Korea holds a mass rally in Pyongyang to pledge loyalty to leader Kim Jong-un after listening to his New Year speech. North Koreans held a mass rally on Tuesday in Pyongyang to pledge loyalty to leader Kim Jong-un after listening to his New Year speech. Footage provided by North Korea's state news agency KCNA, which cannot be independently verified by Reuters, showed a large number of Pyongyang citizens gathered in Kim Square of the mass rally, then marching down the street chanting slogans in support of Kim Jong-un. However, Kim Jong-un was not seen at the rally. KCNA said senior officials, including the president of Presidium of Supreme People's Assembly, Kim Yong-nam, and Premier Park Bong-joo, attended the rally. A blue star sapphire, said to be the world's largest of its kind, has been discovered in Sri Lanka. What could be the world's largest blue sapphire has been discovered in Sri Lanka, which is famous for its precious stones. The owner of the stone has named it the Star of Adam, after a Muslim believed that Adam arrived in Sri Lanka after being banished from the Garden of Eden. His tears are believed to have turned to gems. The stone weighs 1404.49 carats and could fetch $175 million at auction. Gemologists from Sri Lanka's Gemological Institute of Colombo said that what is believed to be the world's largest blue star sapphire, certified as weighing 1404.49 carats, has been discovered in the country, according to the gem's current owner. The owner of the gem, a Sri Lankan businessman, had been collecting goods to set up a jewelry shop where he came upon the stone. Sri Lanka is famous for precious stones, especially sapphires. Modernity meets antiquity as ancient remains of a citadel to be integrated in Israeli high-rise. A 3,400 years old fort in northern Israel will soon be in the basement of a high-rise apartment building. The ancient citadel was recently excavated by archaeologists in the seaside town of Naharia. Nimrod Jetzov led the dig and explains that there was no intention of preserving the site, which was already zoned for construction. The excavation began as a routine procedure called a rescue dig, where the team are merely collecting artifacts that might have archaeological value. Now the businesses news. Oil prices rose more than 2% on Friday following China shares higher after Beijing deactivated a circuit breaker mechanism that was blamed for aggravating equity market crashes, although a persistent global crude surplus kept a lid on gains. Oil prices plunged to 12-year lows in the previous session after China allowed its yuan currency to slip, sending stock markets tumbling globally. Beijing then suspended equities trading as the sharp falls triggered the circuit-breaking mechanism for a second time since its introduction this week. As Chinese equity markets started to recover today, the oil prices rallied much altogether, said Kang Eugene, commodities analyst at NH Investment and Securities based in Seoul. Chinese stocks were boosted as the yuan currency firmed in early trade after the People's Bank of China strengthened its official rate for the first time in 9 trading days. Federal Reserve policymakers appear to have succeeded in their push last month to convince investors the central bank will hold on to its $4.5 trillion portfolio at least until next year, a Fed survey showed on Thursday. Recent interviews with officials showed they were counting on the Fed's massive bond holdings to blunt some of the impact of interest rates hikes this year. They were also concerned that markets did not fully appreciate that the central bank was willing to hang on to the bonds for longer than thought only 3 or 6 months ago. They said the apparent perception gap could explain in part why they are expecting a brisker series of rate hikes in 2016 than investors do. Hyundai Motor Company said on Thursday it will begin production of the Santa Fe Sport model at its Montgomery, Alabama plant in the early summer as it seeks to increase supply for the hot-selling crossover sub-segment of the U.S. market. The Santa Fe Sport, a 5-passenger crossover model, will be one of the 3 models made at the plant, joining the Sonata and Elantra sedans. Production targets for the 3 models will be determined in the coming months, but the plant's capacity will remain at 400,000 vehicles a year, the company said in a statement. Crossover vehicles with their higher profile and utility have taken share of the U.S. market from traditional sedans, and they drive more than of a car than traditional SUVs. Now the science, technology and environment news. Senior White House officials and U.S. intelligence and law enforcement figures will meet with Silicon Valley executives on Friday to discuss how to counter the use of social media by militant groups, sources familiar with the meeting said on Thursday. In an escalation of pressure on technology firms to do more to combat online propaganda from groups such as Islamic State, the meeting follows attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, California, that underscored the role played by social media companies such as Twitter Inc., Alphabet Inc., YouTube, and Facebook Inc. Invited participants include White House Chief of Staff Denis McDonough, Presidential Counterterrorism Advisor Lisa Monaco, Attorney General Loretta Lynch, FBI Director James Comey, National Intelligence Director James Clapper, and National Security Agency Director Mike Rogers, one of the sources said. A source familiar with the meeting said it would focus on social media content, not encrypted communications, another topic of discussion between Silicon Valley and the White House. 2016 is the year Hyperloop, a conceptual high-speed transportation system, becomes a reality, according to Hyperloop Technologies, Inc. 50 kilometers north of Las Vegas in the middle of the desert, the future of high-speed transportation is starting to take shape. According to Hyperloop Technologies CEO Rob Lloyd, this is a test site where a concept originated by Tesla's Elon Musk becomes a viable option for high-speed transportation. The site is called the Propulsion Open Air Test Facility, and it's where the company plans on testing 2 electric motors in high speeds. CEO Hyperloop Technologies Inc. Rob Lloyd saying, "This is the year when we reach our Kitty Hawk moment, which in our terms means a demonstration of the full technology of Hyperloop working at scale, fully deployed with the 4 primary innovations that we are working on." U.S. cyber intelligence firm Eyesight Partners said on Thursday it has determined that a Russian hacking group known as Sandworm caused last month's unprecedented power outage in Ukraine. "We believe that Sandworm was responsible," Eyesight's director of espionage analyst John Hultquist said in an interview. The conclusion was based on analysis of malicious software known as Black Energy 3 and Killdisk, which were used in the attack, and intelligence from sensitive sources, he said. The December 23rd outage at western Ukraine cut power to 80,000 customers for about 60 hours, according to a report from a U.S. energy industry security group. A major bushfire in Western Australia destroyed nearly 100 homes and left 3 people unaccounted for as it tore through a small rural town south of Perth, emergency officials said on Friday. "I believe we have had what I would suggest are catastrophic losses within year loop," said Wayne Gregson, Western Australian Fire and Emergency Services Commissioner. The bushfire, which has already razed 53,000 hectares of land this week, ripped through year loop on Thursday night, population just 545, fanned by blustery hot winds. Around 95 homes were destroyed along with the post office, shops, and the town's fire station, said local media. "It just got out of control. After that, it just ripped through. It was quite scary," volunteer firefighter Jesse Puccio told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Now the entertainment news. Hosts of the talk are interrupted during their acceptance speech on stage at the People's Choice Awards. Quality as incoming, as the team from the talk accepted the favorite daytime TV hosting team award at the People's Choice Awards on Wednesday. A young man in a red biker jacket strode onto the stage and seemed to give his name and plug a project as Cheryl Underwood waved him off, intoning "ah ah." The talk co-host Sharon Osbourne kicked the interloper's backside as he was pushed away and held up her middle finger, while Underwood called "Security, security." The women then laughed off the encounter. The disruption recalled Kanye West's 2009 stunt at the MTV Video Music Awards, where he pulled a microphone from Taylor Swift to complain that Beyoncé should have won. The rest of the live ceremony, which kicks off Hollywood's annual award season culminating with the Oscars on February 28, went off without incident. Blockbuster movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens passes Avatar to become the top-selling film of all time in the United States and Canada, Walt Disney Studios said. Blockbuster movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens passed Avatar on Wednesday to become the top-selling film of all time in the United States and Canada, according to studio Walt Disney. Ticket sales for the Star Wars movie have now topped the record of $760.5 million set by the 2009 release of Avatar. The Force Awakens has taken in $1.5 billion so far globally and is already the fourth highest grossing movie of all time after just 3 weeks in release. To best the global record haul of $2.8 billion for Avatar, The Force Awakens must play well in China, where it opens on Saturday, January 9th. The Force Awakens, the seventh movie in the 40-year-old franchise, opened at theaters in much of the world on December 16th after a mammoth marketing campaign and largely positive reviews. With streaming at a record high and vinyl making a comeback, the UK music industry had a positive year in 2015, according to trade body BPL. And as Grace Pascoe reports, UK music sales figures rose for the first time since 2004. 2015, a number one year for UK music. The industry's pulled in the £1 billion, that's $1.4 billion in revenue, with music consumption of 4%, that's according to the industry group BPI. Its communications director, Gennaro Castaldo, says it's because fans of so many ways to enjoy music BPI. Communications director Gennaro Castaldo saying, I think we saw 27 billion streams of songs. That was an 82% increase on the previous year, but at the same time, CDs, although they have been declining in sales over the last few years, that decline seems to be slowing down. And vinyl has its own sort of fairy tale story as well. Natalie Dormer, Kate Hudson, and Claire Danes among stars at People's Choice Red Carpet in Los Angeles. Kate Hudson, Vanessa Hudgens, Jack Black, and Claire Danes were among the stars on the red carpet at the People's Choice Awards on Wednesday in downtown Los Angeles. Solid dark ensembles dominated the red carpet. Game of Thrones actress Natalie Dormer wore a black jumpsuit with sheer sleeves. Former Disney star Vanessa Hudgens wore a spaghetti-strapped metallic dress with a thigh-high slit, and Grey's Anatomy actress Ellen Pompeo wore a new-length metal-studded dress. Kate Hudson stood out from the crowd in a strapless white jumpsuit, while show host Jane Lynch paired a sea green colored blazer with a gold colored blouse and black trousers. Viewers, now the sports news. Banned European soccer boss President Michel Platini has withdrawn his candidacy from the race for the presidency of soccer scandal-plagued government body FIFA, he told French sports daily L'Equipe on Thursday. Platini, the head of European soccer body UEFA, was handed an 8-year ban from the game along with outgoing FIFA president Sepp Blatter by the federation's Independent Ethics Committee on December 21st. Both have been engulfed by the worst corruption scandal in FIFA's history, as the sport faces criminal investigations in Switzerland and the United States, where 41 soccer officials and sports entities have been indicted on corruption-related charges. Former French international Platini has insisted he was done nothing wrong and was still hoping to win an appeal in time to have been allowed back in time for the election on Feb 26, but said he had changed his mind. The Los Angeles Dodgers signed an 8-year contract with Japanese right-hander Kenta Maeda on Thursday as the team continues to fill the void left by the departure of Zach Greinke. Maeda, a starting pitcher, has registered a record of 97.67 and a 2.39 earned run average since he joined the Hiroshima Carp of the Japan Central League in 2008. The 27 years old is coming off a 15-8 season with a 2.09 ERA in 29 starts and earned his second Sawamura Award as the league's top pitcher. We are excited to be bringing Kenta Maeda into the Dodger organization, Dodgers president of baseball operations Andrew Friedman said in a statement. Quarterback Peyton Manning, who energized the Broncos when he came off the bench in their regular season finale on Sunday, has been told by head coach Gary Kubiak that he will start for Denver in the first playoff game next week. Kubiak met with Manning and the previous starter Brock Osweiler on Thursday before informing all the players about his decision. The Broncos announced on their website, brought on in place of Osweiler with Denver trailing 13.7 on Sunday. Manning rallied his team to a victory that clinched the AFC West title and a number of one seeding in the playoffs. The Broncos finished with 139 yards rushing while Manning was in the game, and the veteran quarterback, a 14-time Pro Bowl selection and 5-time NFL MVP, completed 5 of 9 passes for 69 yards. Let's have a look at Millennium TV News Recap. Obama says won't campaign for any Democrat who doesn't back gun reforms. Pentagon says discussing options with South Korea after North's nuclear test. All 17 miners rescued from rural New York elevator shaft. Turkish army tanks fire at Kurdish militant targets. Turkey seizes 13 tons of pot off Libyan coast. You are up to date with your top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.